Armana no Kiseki is one of those games where everyone who hears about it gets really excited, and then they try to play it and get really disappointed. Here's the exciting part. Konami made an Indiana Jones game. Just look at that box art. And then you try to play it, and it's one of the most frustrating things you've ever encountered. Armana no Kiseki is loosely inspired by Konami's early arcade game Rock'n Rope, but that was a score attack game from about 5 years previous. And it wasn't even one of Konami's big hits of the time. The main thing that Armana no Kiseki borrows from it is the rope mechanic, and that's kind of the central idea behind both games. One thing to be aware of with Armana no Kiseki is that nobody really agrees how it should be written in the Latin alphabet. Is it Armana or Almana? The manual doesn't help here. I went with Armana because I think it's a reference to an archaeological site, Amarna, or maybe a half-remembered and misspelt version of that. Now that makes a whole lot of difference, since in the game, Armana is the jewel stolen from a village. A story very similar to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. The theft of the jewel resulted in the villagers being turned to stone, and as a dashing archaeologist hero, you're trying to get it back. To do that, you're going to have to clear 6 stages of action, and every stage is a free-roaming affair where your only real goal is to get to the door at the end. Within the door you'll find a boss, and when you defeat that boss, you get to move on. To get around those stages, you have to use your grappling hook. You activate it by pressing up and B, and that drops a post while hurling a rope up at about a 30-degree angle. If the hook end of the rope touches a surface, then you'll automatically cling to the rope and start climbing. Hitting up and down will advance you along the rope. When you reach the top, you try to pull yourself up, and hopefully there's a surface there that you can step onto. If you've hit a wall, though, that's not necessarily going to be the case. If you want to get off the rope before you've reached the top, then the best option is to throw another rope. Doing so makes your current rope vanish immediately. This is already a bit of a clunky method for getting around. And unfortunately, the level design really does not lend itself to maneuvering with this hook. Right from the first stage, you're going to find yourself having to stand on the very edge of platforms, as well as use some extremely precise timing when you're standing on a moving platform in order to get through the stage. It is way harder to maneuver than it should be. On top of that, you're going to encounter enemies emerging from the doors, and you're going to find yourself running into them or traps, where you just can't avoid them because you have no maneuverability when you're on the rope. At least you can still attack while clinging to it. Even worse, you'll quickly reach a point where you have to do more complex maneuvers with the grappling hook, like jump off a platform and throw it at just the right moment. The rope takes a long time to travel, which makes getting the timing on these maneuvers really tough. Early on, you just have to do these things to get bonuses, but by stage 3, it is absolutely a required maneuver. Hitting the B button attacks, and all of your weapons have limited ammunition. Should you run out of everything, then the game generously gives you 30 more knives. So you can never truly run out, but it is inconvenient. Hitting select will rotate through what weapon you're using. You start off with the knife, a basic thrown attack, and this is pretty good for the first stage. They'll take out enemies in one hit, and it covers the length of the stage. Later on, you'll encounter enemies that require more than one knife to take out, and you'll want to start looking at other weapons. Next are the bombs that work differently from any other weapon in the game. You press B once to lob them, and they go in a very short arc, and then B again to make them explode. Hopefully you catch whoever you wanted to hit in that explosion. I encountered plenty of times where the explosion didn't seem to do anything to the enemies, probably because the explosion clouds just missed them. At least you can't catch yourself in the explosion. The gun is the improved version of the knife. It behaves exactly the same, but does extra damage. That means it'll become your primary weapon later on, and probably what you want to use against bosses most of the time. The bolas look more like yo-yos on the status menu, and they get thrown diagonally upward. That usually makes them the best choice to use for enemies above you. The only other weapon that can hit enemies that are above you is the orb, and that destroys all enemies on the screen. That might be overkill to use it anytime you need a bit of verticality, but it is good when you need to make sure that a path is clear. The orb also only does as much damage as the dagger, so it won't be able to take out stronger enemies. Finally, there are the spike balls that travel in a similar arc as the bombs, but do damage without having to explode first. These balls do as much damage as the gun, so they're really the choice when you have an enemy that's below you. There are a couple more pickups that you'll find on stages. Beat will fully restore your health bar. You can take 5 hits before you die, and they tend to go very quickly here. Collecting a pendant will extend that maximum life bar by 1, and the absolute maximum life you can have is 8. There are also extra lives, and you can earn more lives with points. You get 3 lives to start with, and when you die, you come back pretty much right where you were. If you lose all your lives, you can continue, but you can only continue 3 times. After that, it's back to the start. And that makes Armana no Kiseki absurdly cruel. There are a lot of points in this game where you just have to get hit, whether it's because a trap spawns right next to you as you climb up, or because the doors will just continually spawn enemies. Getting through anything in this game without losing lives is hard. Reaction among Japanese fans is decidedly mixed. There's a lot of people who appreciate Konami's presentation. The music and visual style of Armana no Kiseki is pretty good, but there's also plenty of people who find it to be tough to play. And I have to come down on that side. Armana no Kiseki isn't a bad game, it's just an awkward one. Running around a stage with a grappling hook should feel freeing, and instead you wind up feeling very constrained. On top of that, the game's use of the grappling hook mechanic requires precision that the game really isn't helping you toward. It becomes way more fiddly than fun. That theme and style is awfully attractive though. There's a reason that Armana no Kiseki keeps drawing people in, and then disappointing them.